Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marco Meyer, and you are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 180.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, joined as always by darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just enjoying that the winter series came to an end on the same day that England rugby started the Autumn Cup. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. It's strange times that we're living in right now. The Grand Slam not in Wolverhampton this year. It's going to be in Coventry and not starting on a Saturday, starting tomorrow when you're listening to this on a Sunday, starting on the Monday. And we've got a couple of guests lined up for you on this Sunday show. You're going to hear from the BDO world champion Wayne Warren. Also going to hear from the director of the 7 feet 9 1/4 inches film, Peter O'Brien. They're both going to be joining us a little bit later on. But let's start off the show by looking back at some darts that we've seen this week. And as you mentioned, the Winter Series and the PDC, also the Grand Slam qualifier. And Michael Smith, a brilliant start to the week, ending his 2-year title drought with 2 titles, topping the Winter Series as well. Can he keep that winning feeling going for the next 2 weeks and maybe land one of these big titles?
I mean, he definitely could. We've been saying it for so long now that maybe it won't ever happen, but you have to think it's just a matter of time. Granted, as there are other players, we've said that about before. Mervyn King in the PDC has never won a major. Dave Chisnell's never won a TV event of any kind. And it seems almost preposterous that a player of his caliber and has been at the top of the game for as long as he hasn't. And now we're getting to the point where we can say the same about Michael Smith. But also Michael Smith hasn't really looked likely for some time. He did make the World Cup final just last week, but we talked about that. They didn't look like the best team. They got it done. They were able to find a way to get over the line every round up until the final, but they never looked like they were, he and Rob Cross together looked like they were in the right form to win that. But boy, did Michael Smith look like he took some confidence out of that, and he just hit the ground running at the Winter Series, which, as I just noted, is still in autumn, winning those first 2 events. And yes, he might have been fortunate at times, but you need to be fortunate at times. He was, though, the best player over those 2 days, and he got it done when he needed to. And even though he didn't back it up with another title or another deep run over the last 3 days, he didn't need to. He got those 2 titles. He got what is more importantly than even the confidence is the £20,000 on his ProTour Order of Merit to help him make sure that he's in those Euro Tour seats next year, high up the ProTour Order of Merit, when assuming the calendar gets going off the bat at the start of next year, to make sure that he is still up there, but also for the confidence. And it is more wide open than it's ever been. We've been talking about that all year. Yes, there are 3 players who are a tier above everyone else, but they're not 3 tiers above everyone else like Michael van Gerwen has been for the better part of a decade. That's why if you look on the Euro Tour this year, other than the one Gerwen Price won, none of the top 3 won any of the other 3. And in fact, 2 of them were won by players outside the top 32. If Michael Smith plays like he did on Tuesday and Wednesday, he has every chance going into the Grand Slam. He has every chance going into the Players' Championship final. He has every chance going into the World Championship. And he will need to take those chances because he's defending World Championship final money in the less than 2 months now. So he'll need to take these chances, but he has every chance playing like that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you can't underestimate how much winning these titles means to the players and their confidence they take from it. I know they're £10,000 for winning them, and these big TV events that we've got coming up, you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds for winning them. There's a lot more prestige around these events, but you look at Michael Smith, and it was the first ranking title that he's picked up in 941 days, the first one that he picked up at the start of the week on the Tuesday, the first event. So it's been a long time, and when you look at his ranking, currently in the top 4 in the world, and he didn't have any winner's prize money on that ranking. Okay, yes, you look at it though, he's got deep in a lot of big events over the last couple of years. The World Championship final coming up that he's got to defend from 2 years ago. Last year, the World Match Play final, got a couple of semi-finals as well, UK Open, European Championship, and this year another semi-final, the World Match Play. So he has been knocking on the door a lot more often in the last couple of years, not quite getting over the line. And we all know that the next step for him in his career, his progression, is to get one of these big titles. But yeah, it's been a long time for him just to win any sort of title. couple of years ago, July 2018, he won the Shanghai Darts Masters, an event that doesn't even happen anymore. And his last ranking title, April 2018. So been a long time, but looking at his performances those first couple of days and even the games that he ended up losing the next 3 days after he won those first two titles, he was losing with 95 plus averages every single time. So you kind of feel like his game is in a good place. But as you alluded to there, if he's going to win one of these titles, he's probably going to have to beat one, possibly two of the big three that we talk about: Van Gerwen, Wright and Price. And just looking at the Players' Championship finals draw that's done now, could play Gary Anderson in the second round, could be Jose de Sousa in the third round, and could be Peter Wright in the quarterfinals. Grand Slam draw that's come out, we're going to come on to talk about that a bit later, but he's got a very tough draw just in the group stage of that as well. So if he is going to win one of these big titles, he is going to do it the hard way. And I forgot to mention as well, on the current provisional field as well, could potentially play Devon Peterson in the last 32 of the World Championship at the end of the year. So it is going to be hard for him to win one of these three titles, but if you win two titles this week, then you've got to go into it with a lot of confidence.
Now, it was a busy final week of the Pro Tour season for 2020, not just Pro Tour, but also the qualifier. So busy final week with Grand Slam, Players' Championship, Finals, World Championship, and even tour cards all on the line. Who would you say are the biggest winners and losers from the week?
Yeah, there's a lot of people to choose from, and we spoke about it on our last show on Monday ahead of this big run of events coming up this week, and put on Twitter as well. Would we see a player start the week not in the Grand Slam, not in the provisional spots for the Players' Championship finals or the World Championship, and do the hat-trick and qualify for all three? Well, we didn't see someone do all three, but we did see four players get two of the three, which I'm going to give a mention to. Adam Hunt came through the Grand Slam qualifiers on the Monday and then managed to get into the Players' Championship finals. And then three other players, Andy Bolton, Callum Ridds and Ryan Murray, all getting into the Players' Championship finals and the World Championship. So they've definitely got to get a shout out for being able to do that on the final week when there was a lot up for grabs, as you say. A couple other players I'll give a mention to as well. Adrian Lewis looks like he's coming back into some form. We're not going to see him in the Grand Slam next week, but got to a quarter-final and a semi-final the last few days. So he's getting back into some form at the right time of the year. And you touched on it last week as well at the start of the show. He is a player that seems to turn up at this time of the year. Another player as well, Krzysztof Kachuk, didn't have a great end to his World Cup with Poland, but some magnificent stuff that we saw him. And he was, fun fact for you guys, he was the first player that I saw play when I went to Lakeside a couple of years ago, play our good friend Dave Parletti and beat him. But this week had some good runs, a couple of last 16s, quarter-final. And one other player I mentioned as well, Keane Barry. Okay, he only ended up playing this week. It was his debut week on the Pro Tour, but finished up in the top 20 averages for the season. Last 16, a couple of last 32s, a lot of promise, and really looking forward to seeing him play on the tour next year. Some players who, on the other side of things, that had a bad week. There's a couple of players that were in the spots for the Players' Championship finals and the World Championship at the start of the week. Benito van der Pas and Scott Baker. Benito dropping out of the Players' Championship field today, and Scott Baker dropping out the World Championship field today. But both of those missing out on both of those events, which is going to be difficult now for them to keep their tour card. Justin Pipe, at the start of the week, I wouldn't have put him in this bracket. I'd have put him in the other one, qualifying for the Grand Slam. But today, the final event, 5-0 up against Joe Cullen, averaging 112, and ends up losing the game 6-5, and that put an end to his chances of qualifying for the other two events that I mentioned. And Joe Cullen, of course, going on to win the title. And who knows, if he'd have got through that first round game, we could have been talking about Justin Pipe being a title winner again. So, yeah, I'll give those a mention as well. A few other players, Rob Cross and Glenn Durrant, didn't have great weeks at all. And Robert Thornton as well, we spoke about him last week. He's not in the Grand Slam or the other two events, and it's now down to that PDPA qualifier in a couple of weeks. Got to get through that, or looks like he's going to be heading to Q School to get his tour card back.
Well, you left no stone unturned there. I'll focus just a little bit more, though, starting with Callum Ritz. What a week it was for him. You mentioned how he wasn't in the World Championship field when the week started. I believe he also wasn't in the Players' Championship field when the week started. And, you know, just like Justin Pipe, who you spoke about and I'll come on to for in a second, it was a bit unfortunate. If you look at the players ahead of Justin Pipe on the average list, other than Keane Barry, who, as you mentioned, was making his debut this past week in the Players' Championship events for this year, the only person who wasn't in the World Championship field at the start of this week ahead of Justin Pipe is Callum Ritz. Well, Callan Ritz went and got it done and got into the World Championship field, winning his board on 3 of the 5 days and making it all the way to the semifinals one of those days. The other 2 times, of course, he went out in the very first round. You can cut him a little bit of slack when you have a semifinal in there. And it's not like he played poorly. And of his 14 matches, he averaged over 95 in 11 of them, including in all of his losses, bar the first round loss to Gavin Carlin on Friday. So he was just playing at a phenomenally high level each and every day, each and every match. And that's how he got in there. And it's the best we've seen from him. A player that a lot of people have talked about as being one of the future stars of the game. That future term is becoming less and less apt because playing like this over those 5 days, he's becoming a current star. He needs to be able to duplicate this, and we'll see if he will Worlds. But this was a big win for him to be able to go with the pressure and get into the World Championships, to get into the Players' Championship field, and to do it in style, I think was just huge. But at the opposite end, Justin Pipe. As you mentioned, the week started great by qualifying for the Grand Slam. First time he'll be in that event in 8 years, or 7 years rather. But he wasn't able to get it done despite playing well over the 5 Players' Championship events. And in the end, he wasn't even that close to the World Championships, over 2,000 pounds out of it. And okay, you go back, he was a little unfortunate during the summer series. He was battling an injury and had to miss 2 days and wasn't able to play at his best on the others. But he's gotten a lot of bad luck this year. Of the 21 losses he has in Players' Championship events, matches this year, in more than half of those defeats, he averaged over 95. So it's not like he's been doing that much wrong. And okay, he was 5-0 up and lost to Joe Cullen, but Joe Cullen lifted his game and played phenomenally well to get back into that and eventually win. Justin Pipe still averaged almost 104. He averaged nearly 108 in the autumn series when he lost to Karol Sedlacek. So he's been playing really well, but he hasn't been able to get results, and that's been really the entire season for him. You put him at the other end, the exact opposite of Callan Ritz, really, playing just as well, but not getting those results this week. So I'll put him as one of the big losers, and I'm trying to think if there's anyone else to mention that you didn't mention. Andy Bolton, what a great week it was for him. Then you had some players, Ron Muhlenkamp, I don't know if you mentioned him, but also a player who was outside the field, but had a great final week, I should say, after it was a poor season. It looked like last year was that breakthrough year, all those semifinals, getting to the Grand Prix, but wasn't able to hit the ground running either pre or post-COVID, or pre or during COVID, I guess I should say, until this week. But getting into the World Championship field just takes a little bit of pressure off of what will be a huge 2021 for him when he defends the money from qualifying for those TV events in 2019.
Well, the draw for the Grand Slam next week is out, and we're going to come on to look ahead to that in a moment. But first, let's hear from our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the reigning BDO World Champion, Wayne Warren.
Wayne, you require 50. Game, shots, and the 2020 BDO World Professional Darts Champion, Wayne Warren!
I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the reigning BDO World Champion, Wayne Warren. Thank you very much for the time, Wayne. How are you doing?
Very good, Alex. Thank you. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to my next tournament. The one and only one. Well, it's my third one this year.
Yeah, it's a big week coming up, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Just want to rewind to January, and we spoke a few times that final weekend at the O2. You got through the quarterfinals, you get past Scott Mitchell in the semi-finals. How were you feeling going into that final, your first world final against Jim Williams?
Well, I think it was my dream to make a final, to be honest. Winning it's a bonus, but after beating Scott, I think I did get a bit nervous, and the more I was thinking about getting to the fight, when I was in the final, but relieved more than anything, because I'd been gutted if I'd lost in the semis, like everybody else is. Losing in the semis, you lose in the final, okay, at least runners up, you're getting something for it, really. But but I was ecstatic, really, to get into the final. Yeah, it was great.
We spoke to Jim on the show last week, and he said that you both found out what the prize money you were playing for on the day of the final. There was obviously lots of rumours going around that week. How did you try and process that information ahead of playing in the biggest game of your career?
Well, the thing is, like, we didn't know what to believe, because I was, well, not me personally. I think the whole 32 of us was told. Well, I had 3 different figures. Do you know what I mean? 23,000, 50,000, 60,000. So, really speaking, we were just playing for the title, and then what came. But I really didn't expect to have the answer at 23,000. I swear. I honestly got, me and Paul Brown spoke, and we thought it'd be 50. You know what I mean? As a cut of 50%. But to have a cut of 77% is a bit much, isn't it?
Definitely, and we saw that night as well. We had a lot of support in the crowd, family, friends. How did it feel walking out to play in that world final? You walk on and everything, and seeing the support you had ahead of playing the game.
Well, I'll be a liar to say if I wasn't nervous. You know what I mean? It was. I was more nervous. I just wanted to get up on the stage. The build up to it. I didn't have a very good night's sleep. Obviously, you're thinking about things and this, that, the other. I was quite nervous until I got up on the stage. Obviously, you relax a little bit more then, but it was a great feeling. Don't get me wrong. I loved every minute of it. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget it. Never ever forget it. But you know, to win it, you just dreams there, aren't they? The dreams. And it was played in a good spirit, because me and Jim, we're good mates, and you know, it was played in a great spirit. Whoever had won, like, you know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah, and it was a great final as well, very close, 3-3, and then you went off for a break, and Jim mentioned as well that you had a 20-minute break that you weren't quite sure was going to happen, that they got told when you came off, but you come back on 4-4, then you win the next 3 sets, and when that toss goes in, how much did that mean to win that title, and what memories come back to your mind now when you think about it?
Well, yeah, Jim was right, because we went off stage, and then we were ready to walk back on stage, and they stopped us. I think Des up to his tricks again. I don't know what he was doing. He was arguing with somebody in the back room. Anyway, they stopped us, got up. I mean, it was like 20 minutes. Well, obviously, as you see, it didn't affect me as much. I think it affected Jim. It spoiled his rhythm, because, you know, I mean, it took him a while to get back into it, and I pulled away a bit then, because I think I went 3 sets on a bounce, I think. It was a bit off-putting, the longer break, but it worked for me, so I'm not complaining. I remember every bit of it to win that 50, because I was looking back on it. On the last leg I won, Jim was sitting on double 19, and I had missed the bull for a 12. So it was a hell of a leg, and if I had lost that, Jim would have won our set. So then it would have been 6-5 then. So who knows then? Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it was a great final for 2 players, both averaged 90 plus. Like, I think it was both 91 averages, whatever it was. So it was great to play in, and I think it was good to watch as well. What I heard, like.
When we spoke earlier in the week, you said you were planning to go to Q School, and obviously you win the title, and a few days later after that it would have been, and it's understandable the reasons for pulling out. But we did see your good friend, Nick Kenny. You call him your sat-nav. How good was it to see him win his tour card?
Oh, yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think Nick got a very, very good future ahead of him. You know, he's young boy, he's eager, he's got his head switched on the right way. He's good. He's good in all departments. Yeah, and going back, like, he is my sat-nav. Yeah. But he's not my sat-nav this weekend, man. I got to travel on my own, so. No, he's been great to me, Nick, and I really wish him, and I wish him all the very best. Hopefully, I can get a tour card in January, and then obviously we can be back together travelling then, but we'll see what will be. But I wish Nick all the best, and he's been great. He's been great help for me, fair play. And as a team, you know what I mean, we stick together, we enjoy, we have a bit of fun. It's not all serious. We got a great management team, Big Five Sports, they're brilliant there. Brilliant. Paul Brown looks after us, fantastic. I got to say that.
And obviously this year we've seen a lot of events cancelled. So when we look back to the events that have gone ahead this year, and your first year as the world champion, you made a strong start. You won some events in Romania, Slovakia, semi-final with the Dutch Open, the big one there as well. How much did you enjoy those first month or so of travelling around Europe and being introduced as a world champion?
And I got to be honest, when the countries I went in, they looked after me. They were brilliant in Romania and Slovakia. They were fantastic. Not saying Holland, they looked after me in Holland. Superb, to be honest, in Holland. That tournament is, if anyone who want to go and see how a tournament is run, go and have a look at that one, because you're talking about 4,000 entries and everything is finished to the clock, boy. Bang, bang, bang. And to come semi-final, I lost to Ross Montgomery, who made the mine again. You know what I mean? And he went on to win it. That's a great achievement for me to get to the last four, and you're under pressure. Obviously, he has been world champion, and people expect this, expect that, and they watch there when they start. I thought this year would have been a great year for me. You know what I mean? Loads planned. Everything was planned for this year. I would have been on the road. I wouldn't have been working. I wouldn't have thought for this year, because I had been too busy, and we had a lot of exhibitions lined up, a lot, and then all with the COVID coming in, and it's like kicking them down, kicking when a man is down again. You know what I mean? I'm at two sucker punches now between the money for winning the World Championship, and then you had this COVID coming again, which has cost me a lot of money again. Like, there you are. It could be worse things could have happened, I suppose. So I just got to grin and bear it and see what happens in the future.
Well, let's look ahead to the future and hopefully more positive times for you. And next week you're going to be back in the Grand Slam. You made your debut in it last year, and I think I'm right in saying you didn't go into it 100% with an injury. You pulled out of the World Masters a couple of weeks ago. But what do you remember about that first year playing in the Grand Slam?
Yeah, look, unless you played in our side, I found it first. I mean, they look after you. It's run professional. It is fantastic. There's no other word to say about it. And I didn't do myself justice last year because, reason being, like I said, I was in Plaster for 6 weeks. And that's why I had to pull out the Masters. Where that Des didn't believe me, I even had to he made me get a sick note from the doctor, from the hospital, sending to him. Des is Des, isn't he? And I went there. I had the plaster off, and I had just over a week, 10 days practice, but the wrist was still stiff, and the darts I had, and they were a bit late for me. So I spoke to a mate of mine in the PDC, Dean Williams, and he advised me to go up a couple of grams with my wrist as it is. And fair play to him, man. He's obviously he's seen something that I didn't see. So I spoke to Simon Hall, Red Dragon, and we had a chat, and they made me a new set of darts, heavier ones, and I had them in December. It was a couple of weeks just before we went to the World Championships, and there we are. They were wonders for me. It's the same as they made darts for Peter Wright as well. So they were wonders for him, and me. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week. Really looking forward to it. Competitive darts. So it means it's been a long layoff for me. As Paul will tell you, I'm not the biggest of practicers anyway, but the only thing I could be a bit rusty on is match play. But obviously I'll get there. I'm more confident this year than I was last year, put it that way. Yeah.
Good to hear. Well, we've seen the sad demise of the BDO this year, and there's probably a lot of people thinking, were we going to see any BDO invites for the Grand Slam? So when you did get that call to say that you are going to be in, how much of a boost was that, considering everything that you've missed out on this year?
Well, to be honest, like you said, I didn't think anybody from the BDO would have got in the way it's been run, and no tournaments this year. And I found out I was in through social media. Somebody I can't remember who it was, congratulated me on Facebook to say, well done on your Grand Slam spot. That's the only time I knew. Then I had to make a phone call in to Paul, and he said, yes, right. He said, you're in. He said, me and McCool Suzuki, the two winners they put in. And that's all. Due to lack of tournaments, which I can understand 100%. 100%. So when I heard that, I was really, really pleased. So I had I had something to aim for then. I tried the home darts, but my internet was nowhere near as strong as I could get it where I live. I had it all tested and everything. It freezes, not all the time, just now and then. Yeah, you can't have that. Like, you can't have that. So I couldn't play that. And they wanted me to play that, so I couldn't play that. But I don't think that would have suited me then anyway. But anyway, that story's gone. But I am looking forward to next week. Yeah, I can't wait.
And you touched on the preparation there. I believe Wales, you've just come out of a 2.5 week lockdown. So what is the preparation been like for the Grand Slam? What's it going to be like between now and Monday when you play your first game?
I've been renovating my house top to bottom. I've been busy working as well, and I've been when been locked down, I've been renovating my house as well. So I went to put a board up to the garage, but my local, they're great to be a Trevor Rugby Club. I'll be over there now, and I've been over there all week. This week, every night, and I've had a few games with the boys, and you know, it's good. I've got a good side. We've got some good players there. But they've given me the board for, you know, the only thing I find different, you've got to wear a mask, sanitize your hands, which makes your hands quite slippery. So you sanitize your hands, then you put chalk on them, then you sit down and sanitize again because of all the rules and regulations they got in. But yeah, I'm not one to practice, but this week I've hit the board quite bad, to be honest. Yeah. I bet Paul Brown is shocked as well, I've known it.
Well, last one before we let you go, and do appreciate your time, and it's going to be great to see you back on that stage next week and get the introduction as the champion of the world and everything like that. You mentioned earlier about Q School next year. Is that the big plan then? Get to the PDC, give it a go there? Is that your main goal now you've got for the future?
That's the plan now. Yeah, 100%. Q School, because, you know what I mean, look, we know how hard Q School is. If I'm lucky enough to get a card, all well and good, that's my future then. If I don't get a card, I got the WDF to fall back on, plus then I can go to Challenge Tours, but at least I will go to Q School with a clear head this time. I couldn't have gone last year because I wouldn't have done myself any justice. You can't go to a Q School half and half, and you've got to have a clear head, because that's you know, it's a powerful tournament. You haven't got a weak player there, really. So that's my plan. Q School, and then see what comes after that. Excellent.
Well, Wayne, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Appreciate your time, and best of luck next week. Really looking forward to seeing you playing in the Grand Slam.
My pleasure, Alex. Thanks very much.
Thanks again to Wayne for joining us, and the BDO World Champion will be part of the Grand Slam coming up starting on Monday, tomorrow, when you're listening to this. And the draws out took place after the Winter Series finished this evening, and some tough looking draws from the draw. Is this for you the hardest Grand Slam to call so far?
It might be, and it, you know, the BDO losing those 6 spots that they've had for the last 5 years is a big part of that, because now the field is deeper as a result. And okay, there's still, you know, a few players who got through, no disrespect intended to them, who you wouldn't expect to get through the qualifiers to make up the groups, like Adam Hunt, Justin Pipe, although as we've mentioned, Pipe's been playing well, which adds a little bit of diversity to the field. Overall, it's probably the strongest field there's ever been. And that just in and of itself makes it more difficult. But then you add the fact that we've been talking about for some time now, that Michael Van Gerwen is more vulnerable than he's been, and there are 2 players on his level, or maybe even above his level right now. It makes it more wide open. And then that second tier of players that, you know, there's 10 or 15 of them that could come through, and if they get hot, could win it, even if those top 3 are playing at or near their best. That just makes it so much more difficult to call than it normally would be. It doesn't mean we don't have upsets. You know, Gerwen Price winning it 2 years ago was definitely an upset. Him retaining the title last year, much less so. We've had, though, players come through that we don't expect in winning this event. But it's never been as wide open as this. And if it's wide open, then it's going to be hard to call.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And just touching on the start there with Michael Van Gerwen, and just having a look at the odds for the tournament, Michael does go off as the favourite on the bookmaker that I'm looking at the moment, 7-2, but just behind him, Gerwen Price and Peter Wright both at 4-1. So it is very tight in the who's going to be the favourite for this tournament. And Michael van Gerwen didn't win any of the Winter Series events. I know he missed a few of them because of the injury that he had in the World Cup the previous weekend, but as he missed out on winning any of the titles, it does mean that for the first year since the 2012-13 season, this will be the first year that Michael van Gerwen hasn't won the most PDC senior titles in a season. He's won the most for the last 7 years, Phil Taylor before him. So it kind of tells you that during the year, okay, it's been a different year to every other year that we've had for obvious reasons, but it does tell you that we don't have that clear favourite at the moment. And you mentioned that the BDO players as well going down from the 8 spots to the 2, which on one side of things, it is a shame because when this Grand Slam started 2007, that was one of the big drawing points and talking points was getting to see the PDC versus the BDO players. But you look back to 2007, I was having a look, even then you had players that were qualifying via the BDO route that had already moved over to the PDC, the likes of Jelle Klaassen, Mervyn King, Michael van Gerwen. They got the BDO spots that year for what they'd done in the last couple of years, but there were even players that got picked that year as well, the likes of Scott Waits. And if you remember the chat we had with him a couple of months ago, he thought that one of his mates was prank calling him, saying that he was Barry Hearn and yeah, you've got a spot in the Grand Slam. But he obviously got in there. Mark Webster, Gary Anderson, Phil Nixon, the late Phil Nixon as well, Sean Greatbatch. But given that we've dropped from 8 to 2 and the strength and depth that we speak about in the PDC, it does lend itself to having a stronger field of players. And you look at some of them groups, and we're going to come on to in a moment, but it just makes it a lot harder now to pick a winner and pick 2 players in each group. It is going to be very difficult to see who's going to get through each group, and it's going to make for an exciting week with a crowd or without a crowd.
Let's take a look at some of those groups. Who of the big 3 do you think has the hardest draw? And if you had to pick one, what is the group of death?
Okay, I'll start with the first bit, the big 3. Well, I think I'm going to go with Peter Wright on this one. It's tight, actually, just looking at all the groups in front of me at the moment. But you look at, just based on the 3 other players form-wise at the moment, Ian White's, we know what he's capable of. He's beaten Michael van Gerwen a few weeks ago on TV. Devon Peterson, general consensus, the most improved player of 2020. Dirk van Dijvenbode, he won't be far away from that conversation either, getting to a TV final not so long ago. So as far as a group overall, that's going to be a tough one for Peter. But out of those 3, the big 3, him and Gerwyn Price are playing the best stuff at the moment. So on the other side of things, Michael van Gerwen, he has got 2 very tough players in there that are in some good form. Joe Cullen just won another title, seems to have made that switch to windmill a lot more smoothly than Michael did. Gabriel Clemens as well, one of the top players nowadays, and he's had some big averages in the Grand Slam. I think last year put in 105, 110, something like that in the group stage. Adam Hunt's the unknown quantity there, so that kind of lends itself to maybe picking one of the other 2. I'll go with Group E on that, but as far as a hardest group to call, possibly Group C, given those 3 at the top there, Michael Smith, Christoph Ratajski and Jose de Souza. Not discrediting Lisa Ashton either, because she's picked up some scalps this week and she continues to improve as well. So I'll probably go with Group C as my group of death, but you could easily pick 4 or 5 of those, I think.
Yeah, I'll start with the group of death part. I'll go in the opposite order. I think it has to come down to either Group C or Group E. You mentioned the top 3 in Group C. And Lisa Ashton can beat anyone on her day. That is why she's a 4-time world champion. That's why she's held her own in her first year as a PDC Tour card holder. She didn't have a good week, and that makes her even more appear to be the weak link in this group, because she did struggle this past week in Coventry. But up until then, she had been pretty darn good. And you go back to the Autumn Series where she finished in the top 40 for the week. She did well pre-COVID as well, reaching a few board finals. So she's had a good year, but she hasn't been able to match it in this past week. But the top 3 of that group is still so strong and playing so well right now. That in and of itself makes it a group of death. But Group E, when you have the Grand Prix finalist, you have a European semi-finalist who won on the European Tour and topped the European Tour Order of Merit. You have the world champion and European and Masters champion from this year. And then you have Ian White, who is a fantastic player and is just getting back towards his best over the last couple months. Right after I called out that he was struggling, he played well in the European Championships, and he played all right this past week. So he's playing better than he has in 2020, not at the 2019 level where he was a real threat to win this, but it's just top to bottom a fantastic group. So either Group C or Group E has to be the group of death. And I think then that answers the other part of the question, which of the top three has the toughest draw? Because of how difficult Group E is top to bottom, you have to say Peter Wright. But Group G is no slouch of a group. Johnny Clayton playing fantastically right now. Ryan Joyce, a great run on Saturday, making it to the quarterfinals. He's been, I think, probably his best year on tour because his consistency has stepped up. That's what's been missing over the last couple of years. He's had good runs, but he hasn't been able to maintain it over the course of an entire year. He's getting closer to that now, and that's why he was comfortably in the World Championships this year, and he gets through to this field. Mikura Suzuki, the reigning women's world champion, we haven't seen her. She didn't play the ladies series last month, but that makes it a difficult group, and one that's tough to call. On Group A, you mentioned it, the top three of that group is just, well, what more can you say about it? Gabriel Clemens, I don't know how he hasn't won a title yet, and Joe Collins just won two in the last couple weeks. And then you throw in the world number one. But you mentioned also the hardest group to pick. Though in Groups B and Group D, they're not groups of death, but they're groups that you can make a case for anyone in. Gary Anderson's not been consistent this year. Simon Whitlock's not been consistent this year, but has been playing well recently. Ryan Searle, he's either the best player or the worst player on tour on any given day. And then Adam Kylos, we haven't seen much from. It makes Group B very wide open. And Group D, with Rob Cross struggling, Dave Chisnell's inconsistencies, Luke Humphrey struggling this year, and Justin Pike playing fantastic but losing every match, I don't know what to say about that group either. Groups B and Group D are both very difficult to pick, although I wouldn't call them groups of death.
Well, we're going to try and pick some results from the first day of play in a moment with our sponsors Low Six and get to some of your listener questions. But first, let's hear from our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the director of the 7 feet 9 1/4 inches film, Peter O'Brien.
I think like people perceive the arts as kind of like a pub game.
The associated with beer bellies.
It's a drinking boys game, but as you've seen, it's totally different to that.
She's going to be the next big women's player.
Possibly the world's best.
People who don't know her, they're in for a treat.
You're just as good, if not better, than half of the lads. So if they want to moan, they can step up and play and then see how it turns out.
I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the director of 7 feet 9 1/4 inches, Peter O'Brien. Thank you very much for the time, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. And before we get into the film you've made about darts, let's start with a little bit about yourself. How long have you been involved in the film industry now, and what inspired you to pursue a career in it?
I've been involved for maybe 10 years now, kind of 7 to 8 years in directing. I started off kind of shooting kind of skate films with my friends, and that kind of got me into filmmaking, and then kind of pursued that through college, and got lucky enough to get a job in this industry.
And you've now ventured into the world of darts, but before that, had you been involved in making any other films centred on any other sports, or is a lot of your previous work based outside of the sport genre?
A lot of the stuff I would work on is kind of in the advertising realm, so I would make a lot of online kind of ads, like documentary style ads, and then stuff for TV as well. So a lot of my focus has kind of been on the TV kind of commercial world, and then like my passion be to work more in the kind of the documentary side of things.
And earlier today I was reading an interview with Keith O'Neill, who runs darts academies in Ireland, and he said that you spoke 2 years ago about the idea of making this documentary on junior darts in Ireland. Where did your interest in that come from? Did you play much darts at all, or follow the darts scene in Ireland? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so it's kind of a strange story how it came about. I can go into the kind of side of it if you'd like. We kind of I was out one evening with a couple of my friends having a few pints in Dublin in a pub, and we were watching Champions League match. It was Spurs playing someone, I think. I can't remember who it was, but they had like kind of big screens in the pub, and then suddenly the game hadn't even finished, and suddenly all the kind of screens just turned off and they went black, and we were like, what the hell's going on? Are they closing the pub early, or are we going to get kicked out here or something? And the screens all turned back on, and it was a live feed of their dartboard inside the pub. And we turned around, and there was the pub team were playing another visiting team, and kind of what unfolded was an amazing night of kind of seeing this community. Like, I know I've seen darts on TV, and I
kind of had my own perception of darts, but when I saw this kind of more kind of grassroots community style of people just getting on and playing darts, and the kind of the love they had for the game and kind of for each other, that it was an amazing thing, and that kind of got me into looking into darts in Ireland as a kind of an idea, and then we came across the junior darts side of things and saw these kind of 4 kids from Ireland who were unbelievable and doing really well in the JDC, and that's kind of where the idea kind of kicked off, and I contacted Keith, and the rest is history, I suppose.
The film itself focuses on one of the Academy's exciting young prospects, Katie Sheldon. I think you guys did a great job in bringing across her personality and story. Was the plan always to focus on Katie, or did that come from the filming process and seeing her ability close up and what she was like?
Yeah, exactly. So we were kind of following everyone in the 4 players: Keane Barry, Cillian Heffernan, Sean Cummins, and Katie, and they're all brilliant, and we had an amazing time filming with them all. But Katie's story, I suppose, being a female in a male-dominated sport, kind of came to the fore more, and her personality, she was amazing on camera as well, and just kind of some lovely, just the way she talks and the way she acts it was just really interesting to film her and to observe her. So that's kind of why we focused more in on Katie in the end, just for that kind of female story in the game. I think is something that needs to be told a bit more.
Definitely, yeah. And as you mentioned, the story of Katie going up against the boys and in a previously male-dominated sport now attracting more interest from the girls and women, it's an important one to highlight. Do you feel like this film could perhaps inspire more young girls in Ireland to take up darts, or at least try it out?
Hopefully, yeah. I think it's if you don't see it, you can't do it. You know what I mean? So if they don't see females in these positions, they don't know that it's achievable or it's something that they can do. So I think it's hopefully it inspires a few girls and ladies to take up the game.
As I say, I managed to watch the film earlier this week and saw you went out to Gibraltar for the JDC World Cup. Not quite the happy ending for Katie and the team in the team event, losing out to the Netherlands. But what did you take away from filming that event and seeing how the Irish young talent could compete with the world's best?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing going over to Gibraltar in the first place and getting to travel for the doc. Seeing them in competition. We'd filmed them in Ireland in the smaller kind of INDO competitions, but seeing them on the world stage was amazing, and the setup over there was great. They were tipped to go to the final, and I think just the way the draw happened, they met the kind of hardest competitors in the quarterfinals there. But it was amazing to see them, and I think if they had met anyone else in the quarterfinal, I'd say it would have been the Dutch versus them in the final, but that's just the way it fell on the day.
As you mentioned, another player who features is Keane Barry, and this week we've seen him play on the professional circuit, make his debut on playing at the Players' Championships, picking up some scalps. He's got his tour card for next year. Is there a chance potentially we see a follow-up looking more closely at his progress through the ranks further down the line?
We'd love to, yeah. We have a lot of footage of Keane, and we have filmed his kind of semi-final, I suppose, at that competition, but that he would have gone to the final in the kind of PDC stage. So yeah, we have a lot of footage of Keane, and we've got on really well with Keane, so it would be great to do something with him in the future. Hopefully we have all the necessary ingredients anyway. Good
stuff. Well, your film's been available this week online as part of the Cork Film Festival. Due to the current restrictions, online only this year. Difficult times, I know, at the moment for the film industry with the virus. Was it disappointing when you got the news it wouldn't be happening in person, or were you just happy that it was going to go ahead at all?
It was slightly disappointing not to be able to go down, for sure, but it's kind of works in two ways. You think maybe more people might see it if it's online. Obviously, it's kind of, if it's in Cork, only a certain amount of people can go to it, so hopefully more people have gotten to see it this week. But hopefully next year we'll go to a couple of festivals that we can actually attend and, get to meet people there at the cinema and see it on the big screen. That would be the hope.
Excellent. Well, it's only available in Ireland and Northern Ireland to watch at the moment as part of the festival, but I know there's a lot of interest in here in England and elsewhere for darts fans who want to see it. Is that something we could see happen after the festival finishes, becoming more available to an audience outside of Ireland?
Yeah, so I think that it basically, the plan with it is it'll do a festival run for a year, but that will be, hopefully there'll be some festivals in the UK that it will be available on, and I'm sure a lot of will be doing kind of the online thing with the situation at the moment. And then after roughly about a year, hopefully then we can release it for general release online. But at the moment, it's just available at festivals.
And lastly, what else is coming up for you? Any other projects on the horizon that we should keep an eye out for? Have you got anything exciting lined up for 2021?
2021, just hoping it's a better year than 2020. I have a few commercials at the end of this year, and then hopefully with this documentary project on my belt, I can kind of look to do something new, and hopefully maybe someday kind of move to do a feature documentary as well. That's the plan. Good
stuff. Well, Peter, really appreciate your time. Thanks for talking to us through the film, and best of luck with the rest of the festival and how it goes, and all the best for the rest of the year.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me on.
Support for the weekly Dartscast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ADONIS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code ADONIS. Your balls will thank you. Now, if you excuse me.
Thanks again to Peter for joining us. Now let's move on to some chat about our sponsor, Low Six, who of course present this show, and we're going to do another contest on Monday, the first day of the Grand Slam. We're going to run all 16 games on the day, and a chance for you guys. If any one of you gets 16 out of 16, you've got a chance of being invited on as our guest tipster of the week. We did it for the European Championship. I think someone got 12 or 13 out of 16. The World Cup a couple of weeks ago now, a few of you got 14 out of 16. So another chance to get the perfect 16 out of 16. And I've picked out 4 of the games. We don't know the order of play yet for the Monday, but first game I've picked out, we're going to go to Group A, and it is today's winner, Joe Cullen against Gabriel Clemens.
You really want me to have to struggle on this. That's a tough match, but I think Joe Cullen is just playing that little bit better right now than Gabriel Clemens, and probably has just a little bit more confidence than Gabriel Clemens. But it's a very tight match between two in-form class players. But I'll go Joe Cullen to get it done 5-3.
Can we go for draw on these games? Yeah, is a hard one, and I've just had a look back actually. 110 average Gabriel had in the group stage last year, and unfinished business I think from last year, losing out to Glenn Durrant 10-9 in the last 16, and I think don't know if he had match starts, but he had a very good lead in that. So I'll go the other way. I'll go different. I'll go with Gabriel to get off with a win. Next group, we're going to go to Group C, another tough group to call, and it is Krzysztof Ratajski against Jose de Sousa. How do you see this game going?
You really want me to just have to cry on air, don't you? Again, 2 of the form players this past week, De Sousa losing 2 finals, Ratajski losing a final. Amazing that neither of them won a title because of how well they were playing. I think De Sousa's just a little bit more consistent right now than Ratajski. Ratajski, there's been just some poor matches that have slipped in maybe starting off a televised tournament could just not click for him. I think he'll get into gear as the week goes on. I think the Grand Slam is best for him for that regards, but he just might not be there the first match. I'll go for the Portuguese number 1 to beat the Polish number 1, 5-2.
All right, then I'll go the other direction to keep the theme going. And yeah, both players got to a final this week, both unlucky not to go all the way and pick up a title. Krzysztof, of course, started the week by coming through that Grand Slam qualifier, which I think was probably a lot on his mind going into this week, was to make sure that he was going to be in the Grand Slam. Didn't start the Winter Series off very well. He finished it off on form, though, getting to that final today and losing out to Joe Cullen. So I'll go the other way. I'll go Krzysztof Ratajski. Third game we're going to go to is Group F, and it is James Wade against Damon Heta. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I was really expecting Justin Pipe to get drawn into this group so that Mac Elkin would have his own group of death, having all the players. But Damon Heta ended up getting the last spot in the group instead of Justin Pipe, so it didn't happen. So this is Heta against Wade. I feel like Heta's going to get the upset. I think he's just going to get it done. Wade's experience on TV, you would think would get him over the line, but Heta, he's fearless. And this is a big opportunity for him, and I think he'll get it done. It'll go to a last leg, but he'll outweigh Wade and win it 5-4 with a 12-darter against throw.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with you on this one. And it was only a couple of weeks ago we were talking about James Wade on the show, and he just got to another TV final, close to a 10th TV title. So he's a player that is capable of going on a big run. And, of course, the Grand Slam is one of those tournaments where he does have not the best memories, it's got to be said. 8-0 up in that final 10 years ago to Scott Waitson losing out. So a bit like Gabriel Clemens, unfinished business in this tournament. But yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Damien Hare. I think that the form line just suggests it's going to go to him. And like you, I think it could go all the way 9 legs. Final game we're going to go to, and it is Group H. And we're going to see the champion back in action. Wayne Warren, our guest on the show this week, taking on Nathan Aspinall in his first game. First game as a world champion on TV. How do you see this game going?
I feel like I never pick our guests when we have them on. I guess I have to keep that going. Wayne Warren, of course, didn't have the best go of it 12 months ago in the Grand Slam, but granted, he was ill or injured, I can't recall, that week. You'll have just heard from him, so he'll probably comment on that, can correct me. I think we'll see better from him than we did 12 months ago, but Nathan Aspinall, Premier League finalist, former UK Open champion, it's going to be a bit too much for him, even in front of just crowd noise that'll be pumped in. It'll be enough to see the world number 8 over the line. I'll go Nathan Aspinall to win 5-3.
I'll back the guests like I did on the previous show with the World Cup. I'll go with Wayne Warren, and regardless of the results that he gets this week, it is, as I said to him in the chat that you heard earlier, great to see him get this opportunity, because we've got to think it's 99.9999% likely that Wayne and Makuru will be the last BDO players or BDO invited players in this Grand Slam of darts. We are expecting things to change next year, given that the BDO is sadly no more, whether that's invited players from other organisations, other tours, we're not quite sure. So I'll back the BDO on this one, and as I say, going to be great to see Wayne get this opportunity that perhaps we might not thought was going to happen. So if you guys want to get involved, download the Low6 app. 18 plus, UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly, begambleaware.org, and as I mentioned earlier, if you can get 16 out of 16, a chance to be on the show and be our guest tipster for the week. And of course there'll be a cash prize as well involved in that, and you just got to pick all 16 games for that Monday. All 32 players are going to be involved on that first day to get your picks in. We'll finish up though with some listener questions, and thanks as always for sending them in. And the first one comes from Juanita McDade. Do you think there are aspects from this year that could be used or utilised from this year's calendar of play? And I think they're focusing here on the PDC. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there can. And I don't know. I think I mentioned this a long time ago. That I mean, like back in May or something, but I might not have. But I do actually think there's a place for the darts at home to be part of the permanent PDC calendar. And that's while all the top players in August are going to the World Series events, to give for the rest of the tour something to stay just that little bit sharp. Obviously there's local competitions, obviously as well there's the Red Dragon Champion of Champions event, which unfortunately obviously didn't happen this year, but there isn't PDC competitions for them. So I think that would be a good place to put that in the calendar, to just, while the players are at home practicing, to also have a competition going that month for the players that aren't on the World Series circuit. Beyond that, I do hope we see the events move around more, particularly the World Cup. I think it makes more sense being in the autumn than in the summer, although there are fewer events in the summer, because I think it couldn't cut down on that travel. And maybe the World Cup should be the week before the World Championships, so that the players who are coming over from overseas, the players coming from Asia, players coming from South America and North America, who many of whom will be playing both in the World Cup and the World Championship, don't have to travel twice, and also get that warm-up in front of a PDC audience right ahead of the World Championship, so they're not just thrown in there. I think that is a good place for it on the calendar. But beyond that, I think we're going to see most of the things go back to the way they were, and they should, if we're able to, they should.
A few interesting points you make there, and just touching on the last one that you mentioned there about the World Cup being before the World Championship, and I guess that we were hoping to get on the show before the World Cup. We're going to hopefully get him on before the World Championship again, is Halpe Puru had a lot of travelling to get to Austria for the World Cup, and he's actually in the UK at the moment. He's staying in the UK until the World Championship in a month or so's time, so he hasn't actually gone back to New Zealand. I think he'd have had to do a 2-week quarantine and then come back to the UK to play. So okay, it's going to be different next year. Fingers crossed you won't have to do all this quarantine, and hopefully things will be getting back to normal. But if it is like that, then yeah, potentially we could see something like that. The at-home darts as well, okay, we know it's still going on with the PDC. I think they're on their second or third home tour at the moment. Players a little bit lower down in the rankings. As far as a spectacle for the fans, it's kind of slipped my radar a little bit, given that we've had the tour come back. But for players, definitely to get that match practice in against top players playing at home, given the travel restrictions at the moment. I think we're going to see that stay for a little while longer. World Cup, yeah, I'd like to see it in Austria again next year, give the fans a chance to go if they're allowed to. But one of the big things coming off this week is the 5-day block of events. It's the third time that we've seen it now. The Summer Series, the Autumn Series, the Winter Series. Pros and cons, of course, and as I mentioned with all these answers, the circumstances that we're in at the moment, if we see it going forward and we don't have to do the bubble or the semi-bubble, it's going to be less restrictions for the players. I know it's probably hard for them having to live inside a hotel room for 5 or 6 days, and tensions can run high, as we've seen with the world number 1 and world number 106 today, if you've seen that on Twitter. But yeah, I think we could see that hopefully next year. I think it gives us a good week of entertainment, seeing that race for the World Match Play, the World Championship, the World Grand Prix, whatever it may be, and those big events, seeing that. So yeah, I do think there's going to be some things that we see carry on next year.
Yes, the day starting with world number 1 calling someone a rat, and the day ending with Rad Tysky finishing second on the event. One more question. This one comes from Russ Barber. Which player that are due or are very close to losing their tour card will you, I guess as a fan, miss the most, assuming they don't win it back?
Going to be a shame that we're going to see some of them go. We're not going to see all of them keep hold of their tour card unless we see a ridiculous last 16 or quarterfinal lineup at the World Championship. But some of the players that are still in the top 64 at the moment, but they could drop out. Some of them that we've not seen play for a long time now, but hopefully we'll see him back playing soon. The likes of Kyle Anderson, and I gave him a big build-up on the last show, Cristo Reyes, and let me down, didn't even turn up to play, unfortunately. James Wilson as well, he's starting to drop down a little bit, got a great walk-on tune, the Daydream Believer, which he loves coming out to. A few of the big characters as well that lowered down the rankings, but we enjoy seeing Matthew Edgar, of course, with his Edgar TV, a great personality. Richard North as well. He's got plenty of laughs on Twitter, and his first couple of years on the circuit, getting to the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, looked like he was a player that was going to be around for a little while. Mr. Coat, Jan Dekker, I know he doesn't come out with a coat anymore, but that was good when we saw that in his BDO days and early PDC days. Benito van der Pas, Robert Thornton as well, 2-time major winner in the PDC. Looks like he could drop out. So there's plenty of names in there, and sadly for some of them at least, we're not going to see them keep that hold of their tour cards.
Well, I mean, we'll see. As you mentioned, we don't know yet whether Kyle Anderson, Cristo Reyes, James Wilson, Ted Evans, who you didn't mention as well, all in danger of losing their tour card depending on what happens at the World Championships. They're currently still in the top 64 provisionally, but none of them are at the World Championship, so anything could happen. But of those players that are just outside, assuming they don't qualify through the PDPA qualifier or still some of the regional qualifiers, it is a big group, and I think Robert Thornton is the biggest name of all. Twice major champion in the PDC, once major champion in the BDO, and not just that, having beaten Michael Van Guren and beaten Phil Taylor to win his 2 PDC majors. It looks like it's off to Q school for him. We haven't seen much of him the last couple of years, and that's why he's off to Q school now, assuming he doesn't win through the PDPA qualifier. But it is not necessarily the end of an era, because he can come back, but it's not often where you see a multiple major champion lose his tour card, and it's going to be different not seeing him on the tour. But yeah, you also mentioned Richard North, one of the funny men of darts, and I don't know, I mean, also throw in Tony Alcinas, who you go back a couple years ago and just had that great run at the World Championships, knocking out Peter Wright, making it to the last 16, but just hasn't done much for the last couple of years, and that's why he's dropped out. There's quite a few, and then all as well. Jamie Lewis, former World Championship semifinalist. I think he probably just needs a year away, because we know what he can do, but he hasn't been able to do it over the past 3 years now. Anything else for this week?
A few things, actually. Just want to say, as always, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to our guests for coming on. Thanks to our sponsors, Low Six, who present this show, and our new sponsor, you'll have heard from them a little bit earlier, Manscaped, as well. Thanks for coming on board. We are going to run a sweepstake on Twitter during the Grand Slam. We've got a signed set of German Price darts courtesy of Red Dragon Darts, and we're going to open it up to the listeners. So if you are listening to this now on this Sunday morning, all you've got to do is go to our pinned tweet on Twitter, retweet hashtag Dynamite Darts content, of course, and open to the first 32 of you to do that. You'll get a a spot. We'll do a random draw and assign you to one of the players. So good luck to that. Get in now if you're listening. And should give a mention as well to another thing that we're going to be doing, me and you, Burton, and our colleague Matthew Keane. We're going up against the guys from Double Trouble Drinks for a good cause, Doubles and Run. We're going to be raising a little bit of money, hopefully, for Prostate Cancer UK and Martin Leake's Cash for Kids. The challenge that we've got to do, we've got 30 minutes to hit all 20 doubles on the board from 1 to 20. I think this is going to be the hard part for me. And any time that you have left remaining, go outside and run, and whoever gets the furthest wins the challenge. And we're asking you guys if you want to get involved and predict the distance and the winning team. Go to PayPal, David at doubletrouble.drinks.co.uk. We're suggesting £2 if you want to do that as a go and have as many goes as you want, and whoever gets the closest will win a bottle from Double Trouble Drinks. So it's a great prize and all for a great cause. The date, we're not quite sure when we're going to do it yet, but plenty of time still to get your predictions in, and we'll see how we go.
How far do you think you'll make it?
I think I'll get to double 3.
I was going to say double 8 for me. Are we starting at 1 or are we starting at 20?
I reckon we'll start at 1 to 20. At least we ain't got to hit the bullseye.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I can get to double 8. I'm good at some of those low doubles, so we'll see. A lot of practice on them. But yes, thanks everyone. Get picks in. Feel free to donate. It goes to a very good cause. Hopefully we won't embarrass ourselves too much, either in the dart phase or the running phase, if by chance we get to the running phase. If I don't get to the running phase, I will run half an hour just to make up for the fact that I couldn't hit all 20 doubles in 30 minutes. So I have a feeling I'm going to be running for half an hour. But thanks all for listening. We'll be back. I guess, well, maybe we'll have an episode mid-Grand Slam. We'll see how things are going. If not, we'll be back after the Grand Slam to recap Gerwyn Price's 3rd successive. But until then, just hang tight.